In this video, I'm gonna teach you how to develop wit. So have you ever had a situation where you walk away from talking to somebody and you're like, oh, I should have said that thing. Like maybe you just talked to somebody in passing, or you were in a conversation and then you just left because you had to go, and then you're like, oh, I should have said that funny thing, but you were kind of in your head in the moment. You didn't think of it really fast. I'm gonna teach you how and why you can do it faster and you can develop wit. So I actually used to do this all the time. Whenever I get in my head in social situations, like I'm talking to somebody and maybe I care a little bit too much about what that person thinks of me, or I think of them as kind of like a high status person and I want to impress them. I'm not really that witty because, I tend to get nervous. I used to do this a lot in the past. And sometimes it only happens now when I think of somebody as high status. I'm like, oh my God, everything I say has to be good. It's happening less and less as I get older and as I put myself in more just life situations. But the way that you develop wit is, first off, by realizing it's a muscle. The way to get witty and develop quick wits, you have a quick response that's kind of funny or kind of cool, or you're offering value to the conversation right away and not having to think too much about it, you have to realize that comes with experience. So that comes with putting yourself in more situations where you have to be witty. You can't develop really, really good wit, that really, really good ability to just respond to somebody in a funny or a clever way, unless you're actually in situations where you can develop that muscle. And yes, at the beginning, it will be tough and it will feel kind of awkward, and you won't say the right thing. I mean, you could always be more witty. You could always say something better in a conversation, right? But over time, you'll just start saying wittier things, or coming back with cool comebacks, basically that keep the conversation going in a smooth way. The second thing to do is to develop self-awareness. So, like I said at the beginning of the video, when you have those times when you're in a conversation with somebody, maybe you're buying something at the store and you're having a little 2-minute conversation with somebody behind the cash register and it's going really well, and then they say something funny and you're like, oh yeah, and then you're kind of awkward, and then you leave, and 2 minutes later, or maybe even 5 or 10 minutes later, you're like, oh, that would have been so funny if I said that thing. Or you're at the bar talking to somebody that you have a crush on, and you leave and you're like, oh man, that would have been so awesome if I said this instead. Notice when you actually think of those funny things later, because here's what happens when you start noticing that. See, when you notice that stuff, oh, I could have said this in that situation, that means that you do have the ability, obviously, to come up with that witty response or to say that funny thing in that moment, but it's just delayed. You're not thinking of it until after the fact, until after the situation. But here's the thing, the sooner that stuff, or the sooner that you notice that stuff coming up in your head of what you could have said, basically, what the fuck am I saying here? What's gonna happen is when you notice it, when you notice that funny thing that you could have said, let's say 10 minutes later, and then the next time that you have a situation like that where you could have said a funny thing and you notice it 5 minutes later, that means that you're getting quicker, you're getting slightly wittier as you're noticing that thing that you're thinking of later on that you could have said that was funny in the moment, or that would have been funny in the moment. So basically, the time that you notice yourself coming up with that funny thing to say, instead of 10 minutes, next time it'll be 5 minutes, next time maybe 4 minutes, next time 3 minutes, and soon you might even get it down to 10 seconds, to where you walk away from a conversation and you're like, oh, that would have been so funny if I said that, and you're literally walking away from the conversation. The more that you can notice those funny things that you're thinking of after the fact, the quicker, or the smaller time frame that you can, the better reaction time that you'll get. In this video, I'm probably gonna stop recording and be like, oh, I could have said that. I think that's actually why I like doing live videos on Facebook or Instagram, because it challenges me to respond to comments. If I have 1, 2, or 3 people commenting on those live videos, I can respond to them, and it kind of helps my reflexes. But in person obviously is the best way for you to develop those conversational skills. Because isn't that what we're all shooting for, is to be really good at conversing with people in person, in real time, face to face? I mean, I'm guessing if you follow my content, you're into that. You're into human connection. Okay, so I feel like those two first tips are the most important. Realizing that it is a muscle, and in order to develop wit, you have to put yourself in situations that require you to be witty. And then the second point of noticing when you could have said that funny thing or you could have said that cool thing, just noticing that quicker after having that conversation where you could have said the funny thing. Those are important. And the third thing, kind of a bonus tip that I want to give you on how to develop wit and just how to be better in conversation, how to come up with responses quicker, is to watch people that are kind of witty. Like, watch good stand-up comedians. Not stand-up comedians that look kind of insecure, that are on their way up, or that just have like a style that's just like talking and talking and talking to the audience. Watch stand-up comedians that actually interact with the audience. You know, like when somebody heckles them, they come up with a response back to them, or in an interview, they're able to just come up with a response just like that. Usually these are people that just seem like they just don't give a shit. You know, like they have that attitude. They don't give a shit about what people think of them. They care more, well, I think they just love saying funny shit. They love saying funny things. And a few examples that I can think off the top of my head are, what's that guy's name? Fuck, what is that guy's name? So Daniel Taj is one. Okay, so just to reiterate, the 3 points of this video of how to get wittier: put yourself in situations that require you to be witty. So put yourself in more social situations, preferably with people that like to talk. 2 is recognize when you think of the cool thing that you could have said, and try to just decrease the time. Try to notice that stuff quicker, so you decrease the time between like when you leave that conversation, when you could have said it, and when you're actually thinking of saying it later, after the fact. And 3rd is watch people who are witty in interviews, doing stand-up comedy, and just start to learn like what makes them actually witty. Start to listen to their responses to people, like when stand-up comedians are getting heckled, or when they're just like getting tough questions in interviews and they respond in a certain way, they respond in a funny way, or just a witty way. Like, just observe that, put yourself around people like that. And yeah, those are the 3 tips. If you do those 3 things regularly, on a regular basis, if you make those things part of your life, if you actually apply what I talked about in this video, you will develop wit, and you will have less of those moments where you're like, oh man, I could have said that funny thing, and you'll just be able to respond in conversations. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked this kind of a video, leave it in the comments, let me know. Thanks. I'm drawing a total blank on this guy's name right now. I'm also walking in a park that I've never been to, and I'm observing some of the houses. They're like building new houses by it. So I can just show you right here. It's kind of cool. What is that guy's name? I literally had his name and I just lost it. When I think of it, I'll just put it right here. And yes, when I think of his name, I will use my own tip of recognizing like that I'm thinking of the thing that I could have said afterwards. In this case, it's just thinking of a guy's name.